Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you going? Did you have a good weekend? You might hear some construction noise in the background. That's because we're getting solar panels installed in the top of C block, which is good because we can be a bit more eco-friendly. So today we're going to look at factorising, part 1. So let's write today's title, Factorising, part 1. So our learning goal today is I can factorise. So the idea stems from, well, so far in our Year 9 algebra lessons, we've looked at expanding brackets, right? So if I gave you 2 bracket x minus 3 and I asked you to expand the brackets, you would then tell me, okay, just share out the coefficient 2 with every term inside your bracket so that you will get 2 lots of x minus 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. So this process of going from 2 brackets x minus 3 to 2x minus 6 is called expanding, where we distribute or share out the coefficient in front of the brackets. So today's topic and the next few lessons is called factorising, which is the reverse process. So going from 2x minus 6 to 2 brackets x minus 3. So factorising. Let me spell that correctly. Factorising. So the key idea or the pattern to factorise is, well, look at 2x and minus 6. So we have 2 terms. 2x is your first term and minus 6 is your second term. You're looking for any common factors. So what's in common between 2x and minus 6? Well, they both have an even coefficient, so they both have a common factor of 2. So we pull that common factor of 2 out. Then we write bracket, bracket. Then what is left over? Well, 2, that common factor, times what gives me 2x? Well, 2 times x gives me 2x. So inside the bracket, my first term is x. And then next you're thinking, well, 2 times what gives me minus 6? Well, 2 times minus 3 gives me minus 6. So that's why inside your bracket you have x minus 3. So factorising is going backwards, looking for any common factors. So let's write that dot point down. So factorising means to take out any common factors. So let's have a look at example 1. So example 1 says factorise. So the verb, the doing word, is to factorise. Part A, let's factorise 40 minus 16b. Okay, so you're looking at this question and you're going, okay, first identify how many terms are in this expression. So you've got 40, that's one term, and negative 16b, that's your second term, right? So don't forget to take the negative with the 16 coefficient, take the number, take the sign, right? So between the two terms 40 and negative 16b, what's the common factor? So the first thing I would say is look at the number, look at the coefficients, 40 and negative 16. What is the common factor between 40 and negative 16? In fact, you want the highest common factor. Well, yes, 40 and 16, they're both even, so technically 2 is a factor. But what is the highest common factor between 40 and negative 16? Well, 4 is a factor, but it's not the highest common factor. 8 would be a highest common factor because 8 5s are 40 and 8 times 2 is 16. So we would write equals 8 because that's our highest common factor. Now look at any variables or letters you have. So I've got a B here, but there's no variable in the first term. So there are no common variables. So that's all we have in common is the 8. So you go 8 and brackets. Okay, so we have 2 terms initially, the 40 and the minus 16b. So I expect 2 terms inside my brackets. So there should be 1 term and there should be another term. So looking at the first term of 40, 8 times what gives me 40? 8 times 5 gives me 40, okay? Now look at the second term. 8 times what gives me negative 16b? Well, 8 times what gives me negative 16? Well, 8 times negative 2 gives me negative 16. And in fact, I also still need the b here. So 8 times negative 2b gives me negative 16b. So you have successfully factorized 40 minus 16b by pulling out the highest common factor of 8. And one easy way to check your answer on the exam is to check via expanding. Because if you expanded the black answer, 8 bracket 5 minus 2b, you should get back what you started off with, which is 40 minus 16b. Okay, so let's do another example just to make sure we can factorize. So minus 8x squared minus 12x. So first, look at how many terms do you have in this expression. So terms are separated by plus and minus signs. So we have negative 8x squared as our first term, and then we have negative 12x as our second term. In between our two terms, look at what's the highest common factor between them. So look at the numbers first, negative 8 and negative 12. What's the highest common factor between them? So for starters, they're both negative, so we can take out a negative sign as in common. 8 and 12, they're both even. So 2 is a factor, but it's not the highest common factor. So 4 goes into both 8 and 12, and there's nothing else higher than 4 that goes into them. So 4 would be the highest common factor between negative 8 and negative 12. Right, next look at the variables, the letters, right? So the first term has x squared, the second term has an x in it, so the highest common factor between these two would just be 1x. So the highest common factor between the two terms would be negative 4x. Then you go bracket, bracket. Because I started off with two terms, I expect to have two terms inside my brackets. So what would the inside part be? Well, negative 4x times what gives me negative 8x squared? Well, look at the numbers first. Negative 4 times what gives me negative 8? Well, twice of that gives me negative 8. So inside I have 2. Yeah? Now look at the letters, the variables. I have an x here. X times what gives me x squared? Well, x times x gives me x squared. So my first term is 2x. Now next, you look at the second term. Negative 4 times what gives me negative 12? 3 lots of negative 4 gives me negative 12. So I have to plus 3. Be careful it's a plus, because if it's a negative 3, negative 4 times negative 3 would give me a positive 12 when I only have a negative 12 up here. So negative 4 times a positive 3 gives me a negative 12. That's why I write a positive 3 inside the brackets. Now look at the variable, the x. There's an x here, and then there's an x here, so there's nothing else I need to put inside the brackets. Okay? So again, always check via expanding. So negative 4x times 2x gives me negative 8x squared, which is our first term. Negative 4x times positive 3 gives me negative 12x. So we know our answer is correct because when we expand our answer, we get what we started off with. So factorizing is looking at the highest common factors. Pull out the highest common factor for both the coefficient number and the variables, the letters. And then inside the bracket is whatever's left over in each of the terms.